You are now tuned in to Double.R.Podcast.
Rico, Ron.
How y'all doing tonight?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's get into it, man. Really, what this podcast is about is for the people who don't really know what direction they're going in, whether you just graduated from high school or you're in college and, you're in those years where you're kind of lost. You still don't really know what you want because we all been asked the same question about, like, what do you want to be? What do you want for your life? And you really don't know. You're kind of lost. And so this podcast is really us interviewing guests that are either still in the trenches or they have gained success in the alleyway that they took or the avenue that they're taking. So we're going to just get into it with these guests, find out how they started, get into their background so it can kind of inspire you to either want to take that route they took or it can motivate you to keep going with whatever route you're in. So hopefully we get the right people in here that can shed some insight or light on a career path that you've been looking at.
Just to piggyback off what you said, Rico, this podcast is to bring a spotlight on certain individuals that beforehand never really had that spotlight, or they're going to that place and they just need something to push them, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time that we're doing that, we're also trying to figure out the little things that they do in their day-to-day careers or things like that doesn't get televised or media or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to be interviewing entrepreneurs, people that necessarily didn't take the standard route in school, going to college and things like that, right? Because we can all attest to school isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll be interviewing people. Stay tuned. You might hear some gems in there that might apply to your personal life or your personal aspirations and goals and things of that nature. So just stay tuned, man, and listen and really watch and, catch these gems as we throw them to you.
Nah, for sure. So we got a guest in the building. We brought the first person that's going to grace, our podcast. His name is Sebastian. And he's a photographer and he also makes music. We're going to get into his story, kind of build up and so you guys can see where he came from and how he's still going about his day to day. So without any further introduction, man, come on, Sebastian. What's up, bro? Appreciate you for being on, man.
Appreciate y'all for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Talking to my fellow ZBs.
Yeah, you know. Well, Seby, man, kind of tell us about yourself, Dr. Seby.
Dr. Seby, for sure. I'm curing patients with photos, something like that.
Yeah, curing all diseases.
Something like that. I guess beauty in some spaces. But my story, I guess my background I would say, I was born in Brooklyn, but I know nothing of it, so I don't really claim Brooklyn. But born in Brooklyn, New York, you feel me? Brooklyn, you feel me? But I was really raised out here in South Florida for the most part, Coconut Creek area. I got I learned basically most of my life in this area,
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I kind of we moved around a little bit. Up here to Philadelphia and stuff, but we finally settled down here. My parents, of course, they're from Haiti, Grenadier,
Okay, so in the house?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, sir.
So they came from, Grenadier. My mom came over here first, and my dad came over here, and I was born. And it was an interesting journey for them, because they had to kind of flee when, ICE was still in power and stuff like that. It was different times.
Mm-hmm.
So
very different times, man.
Crazy times. So, my dad, he was working like the government at that time, so he had to literally flee because, ICE was out here killing people and stuff.
Yeah.
So from there, it's crazy like having your life, set in a way.
Yeah.
Because they have their life pretty much set over there,
Mm-hmm.
But due to the scenario and I guess God's plan, they had to come over here and really start from zero.
Yeah.
Like ground zero.
Uproot
Everything.
Yeah, that's kind of all of our stories because I'm Haitian myself too. And my parents, when they got here, ground zero, they had to leave what they were doing.
But
basically, they're paving the way for us. We're like they're like the tadpole, and we're just jumping off of it to kind of give them, a better life at the end of their journey. We just gotta take them full advantage. So basically, I saw, in one of the interviews you did on Voyage, you mentioned you played soccer. Tell me about that, man. How was that? That was like
soccer is interesting because when I grew up, I was never really into soccer.
Yeah.
Like from the age I want to say like from when I was a baby up until about age like 9 years old, I wasn't into soccer.
Was that more your dad?
Yeah, he loved soccer. He was playing soccer all the time. I thought it was the most boring sport in the world. I thought it was too slow. I like watching basketball or football.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't into it like that. But I was just like, it'd be on and be like, bro, this is boring. I fall asleep whole match.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was watching like Mexican League soccer one day with my dad, and then I watched this player do a rainbow flick over somebody's head and then scored a goal, and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I remember I'm at school, elementary school, like 5th grade or whatever, 4th grade, and I'm just practicing that move over and over and over again. And I finally get it, and I'm like, I want to learn some more tricks.
Yeah.
So it really just started with me wanting to be a little, trickster, you feel me? A little trickster, I'm over here doing different tricks out in the street, basically. That's all where it came from. So I was just, my dad finally bought me a ball at one age, and I was just outside playing soccer by myself. And then finally, I started getting cool with some people and play soccer together. And eventually I got really good. So then I played up until, I want to say I turned like 16, 17. And then I got like an injury because before that, I really thought soccer was it for me. I'm like, I'm him. I'm going to be this guy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm watching all the highlight videos. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. You feel me? And I was generally pretty good. But there was like this separation for me at one point where I was like, I got a couple disappointments happening, the injuries, and I was like, yeah, ball is not life. It wasn't for me. So,
not for you no more. Yeah.
So with that, I was like, all right. I had already started slowly ingraining myself in kind of more of an artistic kind of fashion. I started getting more into music. I started getting more into photography. And that's really how it kind of like journeyed itself off into that space. But soccer was, and it still is a passion of mine. Like if anybody ever wants work, I got cleats in my trunk. I got a ball in my trunk. I got cones. If anybody ever wants work, I still keep it close to my heart. It's very, very important to me still.
Let's go. So you mentioned photography. So transitioning from soccer. So you kind of stopped soccer because due to injury, right?
It's like.
Okay. What type of injury? What'd you get?
I don't really know. I never really got checked out. I just knew it was something that literally stopped me from playing.
Damn.
I got like some weird groin injury, like something popped when I was running, and then it happened like twice, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna call it that.
When coaches are preaching, you need to stretch, you need to
and
stretch.
And it was also just like I wasn't taking it as seriously anymore because I was just like, these guys over here live, breathe, eat soccer. I just like having fun. You feel me? And these guys over here trying to kill me over rec ball. I'm like, bro, this is rec soccer. There's girls here too. Like. They're playing hard too, but like, calm down. Like, this is intramural. Okay? You're not going there. You feel me? You're not him like that. Okay.
So how did that transition work for you? Transition to being a photographer. What inspired you? Who did you see? Who put a camera in your hand that was like, let me take a look at that.
It's weird because like originally, I didn't even start off with the actual camera. It was like me and my homies. We started off just taking like funny selfie pictures on our phones and we're making like these weird quirky edits.
Yeah.
And we like hashtag it like Selfie Lord Sunday and see who had the best selfie. We got a bunch of people involved too, and it was a fun small little school trend we had going on. But from there, we really started delving into a certain space of kind of artistry at some point. Where it wasn't. I won't even say artistry yet. It was like we just at one point get clothes. You feel me? Put it together, meet up, link up, take some cool photos, right?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I think I turned like 15 where I got into yearbook and got my hands on a real camera and understood a bit more of how to use a camera.
Yeah.
So when I turned 16, my mom got me my very first camera. And from there, it was just like, it just went off. But even prior to me having that camera, there was like these building blocks that happened where I had like a small, cool, compact camera, like those little small ones that you get. And I just wanted to take different type of photos at one point. I was like, I want to make stories.
Okay.
And then from there, I just delve into trying to create stories on my photos. Like that's as simple as that. You know? It's just like this artistry kind of slowly became to, emerge in a sense where I started delving myself into different spaces of music and different styles of art and stuff. And I was just like, I kind of want to do that and make a story out of a visual. I want to have somebody look at a photo and not just be like, oh, it's cool. I want them to look at it and like think about what this story is trying to elicit in a way. So that's kind of where it started from, and it's grown since then. I could say. Yeah.
All right. So you had any, like little hiccups? Like for me, let's say I want to start off into photography. What would be like one of the first challenges I would run to?
First challenges?
Yeah.
Probably that kind of like. That grind work you gotta do, to get like approval. There's always like you gotta pay your dues.
Yeah.
Anyway, you gotta go out there and do a lot of freak stuff before you even get to doing the paid stuff. You feel me? Like I did my first paid shoot when I got my camera. And then I think 2 months later, someone was like, "Yo, I'm down to pay for a shoot." And I was like, "Wow, I'm good, but I'm not that good." And they paid me $200. Shout out to Samantha and her mother. I love y'all.
Yes, sir.
For believing me. And back then I look at them photos now. I'm like, oh, them photos was buns.
Try.
But for the time period, it was amazing. It was great, and I enjoyed it, and it let me like learn stuff. But even before that, there was still the aspect of you got to do a lot of like grit and grind work. You feel me? Get people's kind of confirmation or approval. It's like you gotta see what you can do before they actually like want to see you do it. It's like what can you do? I just kind of had to prove myself a little bit, do all the grit and grind work and stuff. And then once you kind of get that out of the way, it's like, oh, you're valid. I'm like, yeah, I'm him.
Okay. Yeah. Can I ask you a question real quick? I know a lot of people that are watching this are probably trying to delve into the same career path that you chose. Now, I know you might have dealt with some type of kind of depression or creative block, right? How do you get through those things, and how could you advise somebody that's watching this to get through that?
Good question, man.
I guess there's a funny time period, I think, when I turned like 18 or so, like 2018, 2019. In that space of time when I turned 18, 19, I was like definitely considering quitting, because I've been pursuing it for, I want to say, 2-3 years or so. I felt like there was like a stunt in the growth and nothing was moving. It felt very stagnant. And I really wasn't too sure how to go about it, but I found that there is this beauty in the struggle of it, where you have to just kind of keep creating until you get through the block. Like, even if the creation is mid, even if it's just like, mediocre at best, there's an aspect of what, when you keep creating, you'll kind of move out of that, And there's this quote, I'm not going to try to quote it word for word, but it's like by Chuck Close or something like that. And it's just like, a lot of people wait for inspiration. Yeah. But, waiting for inspiration is kind of for amateurs. The real people just get up and go to work. Yeah. And that's kind of how it is. That's kind of how I went about it, and how I still go about it to this day, where it's like, man, I don't feel inspired. And it's like, nah, there's an aspect of being inspired, maybe even being disciplined. It's like, hey, if you want this to work out, you just have to work at it, and it's going to work itself through, you feel me? Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it, Like, when I think about, like, the gym, you feel me? Like, gym is an art form of itself, Working out is an art form for some people. And, I'm sure a lot of times they wake up like, man, I don't feel like it. They're not motivated. They don't want to do that. They don't want to even see the gym. But there's an aspect of removing the motivation and instilling discipline. Yeah. So once you get that discipline really fully set in stone, it's like, no matter how motivated, I may not feel, this discipline's going to outwork it regardless. You feel me? It has to.
You got to stay consistent.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Working out is like the perfect correlation when it comes to trying to be successful, because it can teach you, like, sometimes you're not going to feel motivated again.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, you got to drag yourself through it.
Like, I use the gym actually as, like, kind of a way to, like, get myself back in rhythm. Anytime I see myself in, like, my current life, because I go by checklists and stuff, and if I see myself falling off in my checklist and my routines, I just start going to the gym. And I build that habit in the gym, because when you build a habit in one place, it'll trickle off. And that goes for good and bad habits, you feel me? If you build up this habit of being late all the time, it's just going to trickle off in every space. And that's a habit I have, you feel me?
I totally agree with you with, like, using the gym to get you back in your rhythm, because there's a couple of times where, like, I'm inconsistent with something I'm trying to do. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm losing a part of myself. I need to go back to the gym, because like the gym start to build that consistency back in you.
Because there's a focus that happens. Yeah. In the gym, You're in the gym. It's like, all right, I'm doing chest day. I'm focused on this. Yeah. So now when you leave that aspect, it's like, all right, I'm leaving the gym. I focused on my chest day. Now I have other things to attain. So it's like, all right, I'm focused on, say, I got to make a business plan for the day, or I got to make, advertisement for the day. I'm focused on that. You know, there's this aspect of focus and lock in, like, that happens in the gym.
Because, like, once you got happy that you actually went to the gym, now you're like, okay, I could take on another task. Like, I did my gym. It's kind of like when your mom tell you, make up your bed at the beginning of the day. You got to win. It's like it's a small win, but you actually did something that you told yourself. You actually did something that your inner self realized you committed to, and you're consistent. So you consistently doing your bed every day.
It's this aspect of kind of like, the real battle, I think, day to day is our minds. You feel me? Yeah. If you let your mind control you, or let your mind trick you into thinking certain things, you're gonna lose. In general, yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things. You wake up and it's like, okay, I got to choose to be this way, even as hard as it is. You feel me? Yeah. You have to literally think against the natural nature of your body sometimes, because the natural nature of your body wants to, just indulge in usually pleasures. And that may be in, the higher aspect of it, or just like in casual, like, oh, I just want to eat this. Yeah. I just want to eat food all the time. You feel me? Or I just don't watch TV all the time. But sometimes you have to say, I can't do that right now, because that's not going to get me to whatever I'm trying to get to right now. So you'll be in this space of just like, oh, limbo sometimes. It's like, okay, you got to like fight that, Yeah. You have to really wake up and fight your mind.
You got to find love within the grind.
Yeah.
Right? That's tough. Because once you start loving the grind, then it's like something you keep doing. It's like addictive, right? And then you just keep doing until at some point you'll make it, and then you turn that grind into something else. You choose another path to go down.
No, for sure. Let me ask you this. Did you have any role models in the photography industry you looked up to?
Role models. I would say I had people, role models. So along the lines of that, I will say there are people who were close to me that I definitely like pulled like strong inspiration from. You know, they inspired me to keep like moving forward in the aspect of the field.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend Oliver Etienne, Misfit Bro, when he was doing photography. He had a real grit and grind about it. You feel me?
Yeah.
And sometimes his methods were a little strange, but for the most part, it was his mindset of like, I'm gonna get it. He had a real sense of determination.
Yeah.
And ambition to him. You know, and I always keep that with me. And it still sticks with me on the aspect of like, don't give up. You feel me?
Okay.
You know, and I got like a lot of people that I pulled inspiration from. The one photographer that really got me into wanting to be a more artistic styled photographer was this photographer. I wish I could meet her someday. She's a really famous photographer named Kat Erlin, and she just creates, like, she does more fashion photography now, but it's such a stylistic approach where it feels cinematic when you look at her photos. It's something different. I wanted to try and achieve that. I don't know if I've done that up till this point, because things have kind of gone the way I guess they're supposed to go for me.
Yeah.
So I've pulled inspiration in the sense of like, oh, I'm inspired by this, but it's not necessarily who I am. But I loved looking at other people's work and just like, oh, this is amazing work, you know, and being inspired by that. So.
Okay.
Speaking on body of works, you said, I was reading your interview that you did with Voyage. Yeah. Right, and you said that you're coming out with a project called Lost and Found. Yeah. Can you dive into that?
So funny enough, the project wasn't out yet at that point, but now it is out, at least the first portion of it. The Lost part, it's going to be kind of a 2-3 part series. I'm not really sure yet. Yeah. But it's a collaborative project. It's kind of like my first real collaborative project of knowing somebody in this space. So with my dear friend Kat, Kathleen Miranda. She's an amazing painter, artist, multimedia. She can sing as well. She's amazing.
Oh, wow. That's good.
And so one day we kind of got together and we're just like, hey, I kind of approached her with this idea of a project. Yeah. Because she's kind of wanting to be a creative director in some spaces. So I was like, all right, you go ahead and we'll design, you know, the costume selection. We'll get the kind of the theme rolling and stuff. And it's one of the spaces that I've been tapping into as far as where this idea came from. Because I've started recently, I won't say recently, but I've delved much deeper into my faith and my belief in God. And this was one of the spaces, like my art specifically, I didn't know how to bring that together until this project. Because I always wanted to like learn how to express my faith and such in my projects.
In your art, okay.
In my art, you feel me? Like your work is your worship. That's what we call it. So I was looking at it, I was like, this is the one project I think I can actually do that in. And we came together with Kat. We came together and we molded this idea together about being lost. You know, the idea of, you know, everyone's lost in something. Yeah. You know, there's different things people can find themselves lost in, whether it be pleasure, money, time. You know. Yeah. But there's also this sense of a feeling of being lost, you know, and it's hard to describe, you know. So we went around and asked people, what does it feel like to be lost, you know? Yeah. And in that question, if you're lost in that question, it's like, I don't really know. It's a sense of direction.
It's like, I don't know. What do you mean?
So it relates. The project is somewhat a reflection of me, but I call the character in the story Our because the human experience is a shared experience. So with that, you know, as much as I may be going through this, someone else is going through this as well. Yeah. Someone else feels that sense of being lost. So I look at the project as not only just a mirror of me, but maybe something someone else can look at and find some sense of inspiration, understand, hey, I'm lost too, and that's okay. You know, there's a sense of it. But eventually the project will tie into the aspect of being found, you know. And for me, you know, I was lost in the world. I was lost in, you know, say sin and things of that nature. And I'm trying to eventually be found in my faith in God and just like a higher purpose and internally, you know. And so that's where the idea of lost comes in this project is a project that's really dear to my heart. Yeah. Honestly. And it's coming together slowly. The book is out. It's I wouldn't say it's probably my favorite book, but it's definitely something I'm very proud of still. Yeah. You know? It's one of those things, you know, as an artist, you're your hardest critic. So it's like, I could have done this better. Yeah. But like I look at it, I'm like, let me appreciate the creation, you know, and then I give respect to the creator. And I'm like, all right,
yeah. It's all part of the journey. But piggybacking off of Rod's previous question, is there anything that helps you get into your creative mode?
Helps me get into my creative mode.
Like any mood you got to set, or you just start attacking it. And
That's a funny thing you say, because for a while, I used to want to wait for the feeling to come about. You know? Yeah. For a while, I was moving off a feeling, and I realized, hey, your feelings can deceive you. You know. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, let me not necessarily move off a feeling all the time. You know, let me think about it. You know. And within it is like there's an aspect of being strategic, but also the passion that needs to kind of arise to make it happen. Yeah. But before, I used to kind of pull inspiration from the darker places, you know? I'd be like in a sad mood. I'm like, I got a project. It's 2 a.m. I'm going to write this all out, you know? Yeah. And that's how one of my first projects came about. It was like 12:24 a.m. I'm like, I was writing until about 2 a.m. Wrote out the entire project. Took a year to complete, But I'm looking now these days not to have to wait to sit in some type of a mood, pull from this mood, because that mood, feelings are fleeting, feelings will come and go.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I can feel this. I can feel sad. I can feel aching. And then within the 2 weeks, I could feel super happy and elated. And then I'm like, I got to look at this project. I'm like, I had to pull from a dark place to go and step into that. Now I got to go back into that place. And it's not to say I don't want to go into that dark place, but I'd rather be able to say, let me take the experience and not necessarily project it, but learn how to kind of exemplify it rather than be like, this is what I'm feeling, throw it up,
Yeah.
So
because you might not necessarily sound the same once you leave that mode that you were in, that feeling.
Exactly.
Because you step back into it, you might be like, you might have a different perspective.
Yeah.
At the same time, and then you just don't match that energy that you had.
Exactly. So it's like, I don't like to try to wait on a feeling. I just try to, like I said, continuously create, as much as I can, and ideas are gonna kind of just continuously make themselves present. I kind of call it like a airdrop from God, where he'd be like, ping. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm try it. And it wasn't like I was waiting for the feeling or anything like that. I'm just kind of already in the motion of creating, and then the actual idea will show itself up within it. Like the project itself, when we started photographing it, it didn't really have a full definition until we pulled up to the beach and shot it. Like I'm talking about, we had all the theme and stuff based out, but I didn't really know what the project was going to be about until we got there. So we got to the beach, we're walking, and I'm like, boom, I know what this project's going to be about now. She's like, right now? I was like, yeah, I just got it. We're good now.
I think it's good though that you can basically put those feelings into words, because a lot of people can't do what you do. It's very hard for them to find the words to basically tell the listener or the watcher how they're feeling. Right? So what you can do when you're doing that, I feel like it touches a lot of people in a different way. Yeah. Right?
Because like I wouldn't say I got any training as far as like how to eloquate myself and how to speak on my emotions and stuff. Like for the most part, my parents, we never really had that practice. Coming from a Haitian household, from African American household, it's not something, or Caribbean household, I should say. It's not something that's really practiced. When you think about it, especially with especially with like a father-son connection. It wasn't something that's practiced. I would say as of late, within the last like year and a half, 2 years, me and my mom have gotten really close in that space.
There's no real like emotional shown in the Haitian and son household. Like it's vague. Yeah. Like they'll show you, joy sometime here and there, smile and laugh with you. Yeah. But there's no like, heart to heart where like your dad's like hugging on you and showing you love. It's more like, you do what you gotta do and I'll do what I gotta do type stuff.
Yeah. Like from your mom, I feel like you get a little too much. Right?
That's why they say us Haitian boys are babies. Like we're mama's boys for real.
But for your dad, it's like you get, I feel like because they were raised in an environment where it was so tough. Yeah. You had to be tough. Yeah. Right? In order to survive the circumstances that they were put under. Right? So I think that's what kind of built it and instilled it in them. Yeah. But now it's like a different time and it's kind of hard. Yeah.
It's a funny thing. It's a weird thing, actually, I should say. Because my dad, he grew up with no father for the most part. And his mom, my grandmother, she always kind of traveled around, so she was selling stuff, you feel me? She had to like, a merchant basically, So, for the most part, he kind of had to grow up by himself and raise his sister as well and his brother. And so he kind of had to make his own definition of what a man was, in a sense, because for the most part, as far as I know, there's no like, male figure in his life. There was no male figure in his life. So the aspect of completing that, towards me is sometimes difficult, because, he only knows kind of how to do him per se. Yeah. And it's not like he's incapable. Like he knows how to show love and stuff. But the aspect of, I guess, a male-to-male connection, like a man-to-man connection, that's something he doesn't know. He can do that for my mom to an extent. He can do that for my sister. But that connection for me to him is sometimes stunted because he probably never really practiced that. Outside of maybe having a couple close friends of his that he considers brothers and such, that emotional kind of deep context that's needed between father and son, I think he doesn't know how to accomplish. He hasn't accomplished that yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of that lacking in the Haitian household for sure, with the father and the sons. But some do a better job. Shout out to the ones that do and show their sons love and emotion. Facts. I hope to be that father. When I do have a son myself, because not getting it. But coming from a Haitian household, man, how'd they feel about your career? Because, in a Haitian household, it's doctor, lawyer, nurse, engineer. Hey, if you're not one of those,
What are you doing?
You're going to school no matter what.
You're going to school no matter what to become a doctor. So how'd they take it?
Funny you're saying this. Like, me and my dad really had a conversation last night, kind of projecting this, you know. And it's funny, like, we have these conversations like from time to time, every once in a while, you know.
It's like they support you for a little while and then they come back with it.
It's like, when it's not moving, and it's more so my dad because, you know, with all due respect, he doesn't know me, you know.
Yeah.
As much as we've been together, grown up together, whatever, he doesn't know me maybe outside of how much I played soccer.
How it is, yeah.
Because when I was playing soccer, woo. Support.
Yeah.
You feel me? My son's great at soccer. You feel me? I see him do stuff on the field, you know, it's cool. You know, but in the aspect of my pursuit towards photography, at first, you know, there's this aspect where I remember I went to college and I really didn't know what I was going to college for, you know, because after I graduated from ATC, I was like, all right, what am I really going here for? So I'm like, I'm going to be a business marketing major, and then I'm going to learn how to transfer that into like photography or something, or do marketing and stuff, because I'm already kind of good with social media.
Yeah.
Once I got into it, I was like, yeah, I don't like this crap like that, you know? And it just showed me how much I don't really operate in the system of school, college per se, you know?
Yeah.
So I went ahead and got my associates. I stuck it out through that. But after that, I was really like, I'm just going to lock in and pursue my career, you know, because I'm already working jobs. You know, I work a full-time job as a photographer in the studio. You know, I'm getting actual work experience.
Clients,
you know?
yeah.
You know, and outside of that, I'm a freelancer. You know, I'm on my own business. You feel me? My own LLC and stuff. So I've done a good portion of, the first kind of steps. You know, there's still steps I need to take, and I'm learning as much as I can. You feel me? I probably should push myself to learn more, but there's like that nerve-wracking kind of like when there's no support sometimes.
Yeah.
I sometimes get into a space where I was like, all right, I'm gonna figure it out, but it's still like I wish I kind of had that backing or solidified backing.
Yeah, that's important when you have, you know, like the right people around you. It can go a long way, man.
Right.
Because they can help you when you're down. You know what I'm saying? They could keep you moving when you don't have that support at home, and you gotta actually go do it on your own and bring in the dough, so they see, you know, like, oh, this is making him money. This is actually like, you know. And
it's crazy because like when my photography, like business is an up and down thing. You know, I haven't found probably the method yet to make it fully consistent for myself, because I'm still figuring out that curve for myself. I'm still learning that space. But when it was moving, okay, that's good. You're doing good. You know, you know, there was a nice little pat in the back. That's good to hear. You feel me? You see me doing shoots. You feel me? But when it's slowed down as of late, you know, there's this worry. There's this, what's your plan? What's this, that, and the third? There's concern for things. I'm like, why are you like this?
In a Haitian household, I feel like it's because, you know, not a lot of Haitians in the past generation have seen a successful photographer. Right. Or seen a successful musician, but they see successful doctors, nurses, and all that all around. So when you're doing something that's unknown to them, there's obviously going to be backlash.
Right. There's a confusion because they know this gets the formula done. You know, like my uncle comes through. He's a doctor. He's a traveling doctor. You feel me? He's like, yeah, he's a doctor. He's doing great. You feel me? And I'm like, that's good for him. You know, his kids are doing great too, I'm sure. You know, there's that weird comparison game that happens in Caribbean households where it's like, he's like, I don't know what to tell my friends. I'm like, I don't know your friends and I don't know their kids. Why should I care?
Exactly.
You know,
do you feel pressure? Do you feel pressure by your parents in order to succeed in your craft?
I used to. Yeah. I used to hold that super heavy on myself because I know I'm the firstborn. There's that weird firstborn mentality that where you come through, it's like, oh, I gotta make it.
You gotta be a savior.
Yeah. Exactly. And I love that you said that because there is this time in my life, I still sometimes struggle with it, but I've kind of I used to create this kind of savior complex in my head where it's like, oh, I got to help everybody. You feel me? I got to help everyone. I got to help my closest friends out. And so I built up this kind of weird demeanor where it's like, all right, I'm always fine, you know? And it wasn't to say that I never showed any sense of emotion because I'm a very emotional person, but it was one of the spaces where I was like, I'm going to just build up this wall to make sure I can help everyone else and never ask for anything in return. And it's like, that's good. You're not really supposed to ask for anything in return when you're helping people out. Yeah. But there was a space where I was just kind of putting out and I was just putting out. I wasn't putting in for myself. Yeah. You know, and I used to just have this immense amount of pressure in my household, at least in my head, where it's like, man, I got to make it happen. My parents try to make their best to not make it seem like there's pressure, but there's still pressure. Yeah. You know, but I've released myself from this sense of responsibility, thinking I'm the savior. You know, as I've delved into my faith with God, I know that I am not the hero of the story. I don't put myself in that position to think I can save everybody. Got to give it a hand. Entirely, because I know I can't do that. You feel me? There's certain things like I know for my dad, he's a prideful man at times. I know I can't go in there, have a conversation, and automatically change his pride. That's not something that's going to happen. No. You know, we were having a conversation last night. He starts delving into the aspect of me needing to achieve more. And I'm like, what does that even look like to you? What does that look like to you? I had to achieve more and be on par with, say, my girlfriend or something. What does that look like to you? Because if you're saying that, with all due respect, we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
You know.
Ooh,
and that's a different kind of space.
You don't want to hurt.
Yeah, so I don't say anything like that. I've come to a space now where I'm just like, I'm just gonna listen to him talk.
Yeah.
Because like I said, with respect, he doesn't know me.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so much he kind of gets the gist of, and it's like, due to the fact that there's been such a lack of kind of connection communication in a sense, it's like I could explain it to you and destroy your argument right now.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it. So I've come to this. I think last night specifically was the night that really woke me up to make me remind myself that people sometimes, even your closest family, are not going to believe in you until you make it it happen, until it's done. You know.
You know,
like they'll never understand that little process or the understanding of there's a process to this. You feel me?
Get to the top. You don't just wake up.
Because if I'm in college and I'm failing mad classes, but I'm still trying to go through college, you'll understand that. You know, because there's that.
Yeah.
There's that sense of a formula to it. But when there's this sense of no real formula to it, there's a misunderstanding as if it's not possible.
They can't really
you
put it
can't
in a
tell me
box.
it's not possible if people are doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You feel me? And then go to say, oh, this is the land of opportunities. Well, then let me chase this opportunity that actually exists.
Yeah.
You know, because don't feed me the narrative of, oh, if I was your age, I'd be pushing to be a doctor. I'm like, well, you're not my age, and
You're
not
not
a
me.
doctor.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a sense of like, you know, in the Asian household is the parent gives you the order and you receive it.
Right.
And you can't really challenge them back. But I feel like once you get to a certain age, you know, once you get in a respectful way, you should be able to challenge back. Because their way of growing up is not the same way we grew up. Their mentality is not the same. The era is not the same. So it's like the way you got it is not the same way I can get it. And that might not work for my personality. I can't force myself to be a doctor for your pleasing and liking and for your friends.
Because then you'll feed me the narrative of, oh, you shouldn't try to change yourself for people. Well, I'm changing myself for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make sure make sure it makes sense on all sides.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna try, like I tried to fit myself in some type of box for a while when I was first going through college, and I realized I just don't fit in this box.
Yeah, was it you?
I don't, and maybe there's a bit of stubbornness, maybe there's a bit of pride in that space, but nonetheless, I just know I don't fit into that box of people.
College
You know,
isn't for everybody.
I'm not a person who likes school. I don't like sitting in class.
Exactly.
I know I don't like taking tests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know.
I mean, at the same time, there's nothing wrong with school if you know
by all
exactly what you're going for.
If you're going to be a doctor, please go to school.
Yeah.
Don't go to YouTube University for that.
But
That's not where you go for that.
If you're
You know,
going to
go.
college,
You know.
if you're going to college and you don't know what you want to do, you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
In a way, you know.
And I think that's really why I kind of wanted to create something like this. Is because for the ones who don't know but are being forced to go to school and trying to figure it out while they're in college, instead of using those years to really take in all the fruit and all the teaching that they can get to be better out there. Because in the middle, it's like you start off your freshman year, sophomore year, and then your junior year, now you're like, oh, shoot, I'm about to graduate and get into the real world. Now you kind of want to change your major and stuff like that. And it's just like you still don't really know what you want to do.
Yeah, like
and
I
you
went
might
to
not
year
even
2.
use your degree. You know what I'm saying?
I went to year 2 and I was like, oh, I'm in year 2. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be an associate in art. I want to do what is it? Arts. You feel me? I want to be in arts. I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna be in arts. So I had everything flipped. You feel me? Literally everything. You know. And I was like, all right, I kind of like this more. I didn't like drawing, but nonetheless, I was learning stuff that I actually take in and actually use. You know.
Sometimes it's good to take that gap year just to figure out yourself.
And I took a gap year in between year 1 and 2 because I needed to work, honestly. You feel me? So I took time to work and I came back into it and finished out, and I was like, that helped genuinely, you know, because I figured out, hey, I want to generally like push in the artist realm. You feel me? I want to understand that space
for sure.
You know, I'm not gonna say I'm like anything different than anybody else, you know, but for me personally, I don't fit into that construct of what it is, you know, and a lot of people actually don't. You know, it's just the aspect of figuring out they don't fit into that, you know.
Yeah. You know, you waste a lot of years just to figure out who you are or what do you want to do. Some people figure out sooner than others, you know, take long. Yeah. But and
that's okay. You know, we gotta eliminate this aspect of like a time. Yeah. Because we live in this
it's a marathon, man.
It's a weird thing. It's like, we're trying to play the long game, but we feel like we have 2 minutes to achieve what's needed for 20 years. You feel me? Yeah. It's like we gotta learn how to play that long game. You know, don't think of yourself as like you're behind. You know, I got a friend who's close to me who always felt like they were behind when it came to college because certain things happened, and so it was like, oh, I'm set back. It's like there's no race to graduate. You know, I'm like, yo, your brother is still in college. He's 40. And it's because he wants to be there. Yeah. There's no race. He's not racing anybody. You know, he's taking his time doing it. You know, he's already gotten everything he needs.
It's your life. It's your journey. You're writing your own story. So.
Exactly. Your path is not going to be any similar to the next person's path. You know, they may have some correlations. We may have the same experiences. It's a shared experience as humans. but your path is your path. And you have to really accept what your path is. And this aspect of like contentment. You feel me?
Yeah.
So, going back to what you were saying, you still, your challenges are still trying for you to manage when there's ups and lows. Mm-hmm. How do you go about that? Like, what have you implement to kind of like being a photographer to figure out when, there's photo shooting season where everybody's booking you, and then there goes a rough path where nobody's booking you? How do you manage that, like, financially?
That is tough. I mean, I work at a photography studio, thankfully, so I'm able to still, have money and stuff and work on that end of it. But in that space where I'm still learning this, how to like manage, say, lows in the season, it's rough. I'll be honest, it's a rough time. You got to generally like lock in, hunker down, and figure out how to move through that space. And I think there's just an aspect of like marketing and stuff that you got to like learn to figure out and things like that. But and that's kind of like my next kind of evolution is really understanding like marketing for myself and what I'm trying to market. Yeah. I had a conversation with my girlfriend today, and she's like, yeah, your stuff is good, but your page, all your photos are relatively dark. And that's my aesthetic as far as like how I like to present my photo shoots. Okay. I got to think about, clients are usually going to want something nice and bright. Yeah. I had that conversation even at my job today where like people may love moody, but they buy bright.
Yeah. They want bright more. So that's kind of,
it's one of those weird little things like, okay, how do I separate, the artist and the business? And it's like, or finding that real median between like, okay, being an artist and being a business. Because when I stepped into it,
you can't necessarily do what you want to do. You got to do what the people want.
To an extent, there's this nice thing, but you still want people to come to you for you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I was looking at it and I'm like, okay, because when I stepped into photography, I'm like, I just wanted to be an artist. Yeah. I just wanted to be an artist, And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's a little naive. Once I grew up, I'm like, that's a little naive. There's an aspect of business that's necessary. So now I'm like, okay, I got to learn that space of it now. So I've been in the process of really understanding the space of the business and how to operate actual business now, and making that work to its benefit. Making it benefit me.
So can that be overwhelming sometimes, like figuring out how you separate the artist from the business?
Yeah, because like I said, when I started off, I just wanted to more so pursue the aspect of being an artist, a creative, and then realizing sooner or later I'd have to turn this into a business venture and see how I could make profit out of this was a different step and something I'm still learning to this day. Yeah. But, as it stands right now, it is sometimes difficult to say, hey, I want to pursue this creative project, but then I got to focus on, say, booking clients and, keeping a track of,
for sure,
what's happening this month and things of that nature versus kind of just being free to create. It's sometimes it can tend to be overwhelming when you just want to like be strong headed in this versus like, oh man, I got to make sure this happens so that way I can fund this. It's a weird like hand in hand thing. Like they work together in a weird way.
Okay.
So do you feel like sometimes I guess work can get in the way of your creative process?
What do you mean by work?
Like work as in you doing it for money versus you doing it for yourself.
There's a beauty in it because the work is also kind of creative. So thankfully I get to work with clients who are relatively interested in what I can create and things of that nature. So it's like, hey, we kind of work together to create something that's different or unique in some space, and something that they of course like themselves, based on what they've seen of me. But still there are those things I have to like manage where it's like, hey, I still have to satisfy these clients. I have to think of it as a clientele basis versus like, hey, this is me and a person coming together collaborating on a project. When I'm doing like my own projects, there's a whole theme basis to it. There's an aspect of me taking time to really like thread it through, make sure the idea makes sense, and sometimes with photo shoots with clients, it happens relatively in the same way. It's just a much shorter time span, So there's a little less luxury of saying, hey, we can draw this out for like a month, versus like where I'm shooting like something else that's a project based. Yeah. I can take, a year and be like, okay, I took the time to make this, and I still give all my clients the best service I possibly can, so
you need that customer service.
Of course. So I still do my best to try to service in that department. But it does sometimes become a bit overwhelming when it's like you want to just do a project. I like doing projects. And it's not that I don't like working with clients. I love humans. I love working with people. But there's this aspect where sometimes it's like, man, I just want to do this versus I like to like do this. But it's necessary.
Every big business you need people. Yeah. Whatever you do in life, you need people. As much as you're like, man, I hate people, man. I ain't trying to go outside today. You need people. We're the one that make everything go around, so you need people. I wanted to ask you, not clientele, how did you go about getting your clients? Because I know, like, for someone who would start off trying to be a photographer, what direction do you start off? How do you, like, you know what? I'm going to go get my clients this way.
Well, for me, it started off with like, word of mouth basis and kind of friend basis, friends who want photos. And I'd do that for them, and I'd be happy enough to do it for free, but that some people would pay me. Yeah. But in that starting phase, at least for me, it was a word of mouth basis before I understood the aspect of like actual marketing and promotional aspects to it, and just kind of having your name, plastered in places that can, effectively move it better.
Move it, yeah.
But for me, it was the aspect of like word of mouth, and demonstration, Yeah. So it's like, hey, I post on Instagram. I made sure I tagged a lot of different things. I made sure I sent it out to people so people see the post, so people know what I'm doing, people understand it. Nowadays, we're in the space of like reels and things of that nature. So now I'm kind of trying to advertise the experience to people.
Okay.
Versus just like showing them a picture, because now we're in this aspect where the media is more. We need more video media now.
Yeah.
So it's like I try to translate that experience as well now.
So did after you getting word of mouth and it's moving, from people reposting you, taking a picture, did that slow down and you kind of had to reinvent yourself to how you were getting your clients, or was it still like this word of mouth just kept moving and moving and moving?
To some extent, I think what keeps businesses alive is reoccurring clients.
Okay.
More than anything, you want new people, of course.
Yeah.
But when you have loyal people, it changes the whole aspect. You're gonna stay in business when you have people who always come back to you.
Okay.
So I've been blessed with certain people who will always come back and take photos with me. But the advantage with that is that they'll continuously share me. They'll continue like, hey, I don't need a photo shoot, but I know someone who needs a photo shoot.
Okay.
So that's what helps a lot. And I got something that really helped out was once I really made my first business card. Yeah. Which now I don't love, but I made it nonetheless, and I take pride in that I made the business card.
Why didn't you like it?
I'm not a graphic designer. To say the least.
So you made it yourself?
Yeah. Okay. I had a close friend of mine who I worked with. His name is Teray, goes by Raver Teddy. He's an awesome DJ, graphic designer, can do like anything. Yeah. Really. And shout out to Raver Teddy.
Yes, sir. Ray.
So he goes ahead and he makes me a logo, and I was like, I love the logo. So I put the logo on everything, and then eventually I made a business card myself because I had understanding of Photoshop. I got a certificate in that when I was in school for the time being. And I was like, all right, I got to make a business card so that way I can move my name around, so that way it's like if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I got to know, hey, at any moment is a business opportunity. Yeah. Anything can be a business venture, So it's not to look at every situation as advantage, but it's like, hey, this could be something that can translate into something. If it's not this person, it'll be the next person because they have my card.
Okay.
So I went ahead and made the card, gave it out, and that's another method of how I learned how to move my name around a bit more.
Yeah, most def.
Okay.
So now you gotten your clients better. Would you now for new clients? So it's still more you gotta advertise, or do you reach out to people and be like, hey, do you put yourself out there when you gotta reach out, or is it you just kind of want to maybe market yourself more, or you put yourself out there to get more exposure?
There's this thing about like if people don't know, like Instagram is where I get most of my client, funnel through. I'm still learning the other methods to kind of have client funnels like through emails and stuff like that. Yeah. But Instagram is where my main client funnel is happening at. So I sometimes forget how often, Instagram is being posted on, because sometimes I'm in the real world. I'm not on Instagram all the time.
Oh, okay.
But there's this need to know, hey, if your clientele is coming from Instagram, then they have to know that you're available, that you're doing bookings, and not just focused on some project. Especially for people who just want to work with you, or work, get a good photo out of you. Some people want that experience of seeing, hey, I saw what you did for this person. I want that same kind of experience,
Yeah.
So I have to kind of remind myself, hey, I got to post on Instagram that I am available. I have to post the experiences that people are having, There's things of that nature. It's just like kind of constantly keeping up with yourself in that space, especially for me, because that's where my main client base is. But within that space, now it's like, okay, I have to put money into marketing, and a lot more money than I used to think was working on Instagram, So now it's just like the naive piece of me where it's like, hey, businesses put a chunk into marketing, a chunk. So I'm not in the level where I could say, hey, I could put a couple $100,000 into marketing, but I could put a couple more dollars into it and say, hey, I need it to reach this audience to get this type of return, and that's real data. That's really what you have to work with when it comes to building and scaling the business is data. So I'm in this little space. The next leap, I think, for me is like understanding data and how it really translates into my business and stuff.
Okay.
Like a lot of people think that, well, first off, a lot of people don't know how big social media is in terms of being an entrepreneur, because that's where you can basically shop yourself, right? So I feel like, and the people who do know it, they just know the basics. Like I can post a picture, I can post a video of what me doing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to market themselves.
Right. For sure.
Right? And I feel like that's a super big thing.
No, for sure.
In our like era, in our generation, like that past generations didn't have, which makes it easier for us to blow up. Right? So in a sense of, you say that you do certain things in terms of like the social media realm. How would you advise somebody else to go about it that's never done it before, like to start? Right.
I definitely think there's a piece of kind of creating what your niche is in a way, where it's like, hey, if this is what you're trying to promote, then you go ahead and stay in that lane for yourself. If you're promoting that you do events, then you have to promote doing events, and that specific way goes about, say, posting the events, posting flyers, whatever the case may be, or and in particular to like photography, I do portraits most of the time, but I do events. So if I'm, say, doing portraits and I want to promote for portraits, I'm going to post more portraits. I'm going to say, these are my deals on portraits. I'm going to try to advise in a way where it's like, hey, this is what I'm trying to promote. This is what I'm trying to push, So people have to have a clear definition of what you are trying to advertise to them. Because if you go ahead and you're in the photography realm and you start just posting everything, there'll become this confusion on what you do. And it's hard for clients to really understand what you're trying to, what you want them to do. There's this thing about kind of clients, us as people need direction when it comes to wanting to buy or purchase stuff. We don't realize there's specific tools and things in marketing that companies and businesses use to kind of reel you in,
Yeah.
So there's different things you have to do to kind of initiate that kind of movement for that person, you feel me? But it also comes from a clear definition of what you are and what your business is, So if I'm a portrait photographer, I'm going to post portraits, and I'm going to post kind of the experience and how I go about portraits, So that's kind of my method in going about it.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Can you share with us, like, as a photographer, when it comes to editing, what are some of the tools you first use and then you learn, I'm not going to use that no more? And then what are the ones you're using now? And you're like, man, I should have been using this at first. Why didn't somebody tell me about this?
Right. So
and how'd you go about finding that?
So when I first started off, I was using Visco. And back then, Visco was kind of underground, it was kind of like the cool niche thing to have in the cut,
Is that like a app?
Yeah, it was an app. It was an app on the phone, you feel me? And it was a cool little place to kind of like edit your photos, because that's where everyone was kind of editing on at the time. But then Visco kind of blew up and became a bit more mainstream-ish, and it just kind of went in that direction.
You got to pay for it now?
No, it's still a free app, but it's just kind of, once I realized the levels that you can get in editing, I realized, okay, Visco is a very basic level, and there's nothing wrong with Visco by any means, but it's just the level of editing that I've grown to now versus where I was at.
So you need more.
Yeah. So, I learned Visco in and out. And I was like, okay, I understand this app. And I downloaded some other photo editing app a while back when I was like way younger into it. I don't even remember the name of it because it was like something kind of bootleg, because I didn't want to pay for the real stuff yet.
When you start, you never want to pay for the real stuff. Of course, you just want to get
not.
what you could get on your hands for free.
So I worked with some app, and it was cool for a time being. And I was like, all right, I got to step it up another level. So I got Photoshop, and then I eventually got Lightroom, which is like the holy grail for the most part for photographers when they're starting off. There's a whole bunch of different editing apps when it comes to taking photos. It's all about what you want, it's capture one, things of that nature.
Okay.
But there's a lot, for people. It depends on your preference and stuff for that. But for me, I locked in with Lightroom and Photoshop, and I just really honed in. So most of my Photoshop experience was from YouTube University. I learned so much out of there.
YouTube teaches you a lot.
I'm telling you.
YouTube teaches you a lot.
So then from there, I went into high school and I took a class on web development, but I was never into coding. So thankfully, by senior year, I think we had a teacher switch, and she taught us more based on like what we were interested in, which really helped me in that space.
That's
like
good.
Senior year. So
see, that's what teachers like that are teachers that I love, because they will like focus on what really you're good at and try to strengthen it instead of like, nah, we gonna learn this whole thing, and half of the class not even interested in it.
Yeah, like there's nothing essentially wrong with coding or how the other teacher was. It was just I wasn't into it. Like I could just never get into it.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I'm like, man, I wish I was into it, because it would help me out. I'm sure a bunch.
Coding is very important,
of course,
nowadays.
But my mind was just like, I'm just not interested in it. I'm not gonna forcibly make myself interested in it if I'm not interested. But this other teacher came in. She really allowed us to hone into the skills that we wanted to master. I had a friend who was really just a videographer, so she allowed him to learn After Effects and Premiere Pro that school year, and he got certificates in that, and now he's a YouTuber.
That's
and he's
awesome.
popping right now. Shout out to 24 Frames of Nick. He's an amazing videographer. He does like deep dives on videos, and he's amazing. He's a cool friend of mine too. But so I just honed in on my Photoshop skills and Lightroom skills, and just took it next level, keep learning more and more and more. And I was never afraid to you know, I think one thing is like you never be afraid to know that you don't know everything, you know.
Yeah.
It's like step back and like, hey, someone else can show you something. I was learning a lot from different people and friends in that nature who would just be like, hey, you should try this instead, you know. So it helped me enhance my editing a whole lot by having an open ear and open mind. But definitely Lightroom and Photoshop are like my holy grail still to this day.
Okay, that's good. So talk to us about what are some ways you had to grind to get your hands on gear. Like you had your first camera and you're like, it's not matching my level. Then you had to get your next camera. Did you have to do outside jobs, or did you use the money that you were making from the first camera to put it back in, or you did outside jobs?
I'm gonna tell you right now, my first camera at 16 was a $300 pawn shop camera.
Okay.
And I used that for almost 2-3 years, right? I've been doing photography for about like 6-7 years now. So perspective wise, by like year 3, I'd gotten pretty good, you know, to the point where people are like asking, hey, what camera are you using? I'm telling them it's nothing impressive, because there's a thing about learning your camera and learning the aspects and skills in photography versus, you know, having the best gear, because you can have the best gear and not know how to use it, you know, or not have the understanding of composition, lighting, and direction, you know. So if you don't understand the fundamentals of photography, it doesn't matter what you have. Yeah. You know. So I was using a relatively beat down, I think it was a Canon Rebel XS, and that's a very basic camera, very basic camera. And to be using it in 2016 was actually crazy, because it was like it was a bummy camera. I was using a kit lens too.
Now you say Rebel XS, to me that was just a different language. So, so like, what's the difference? Like, can you kind of like break that down to
quality in the camera? Yeah, I mean, there's different levels of quality in camera, like megapixels and stuff like that, and also the lenses. Like, I wasn't using a crazy great lens. Like a kit lens is usually kind of frowned upon to an extent, but that's what I had, you know. My mom bought me the camera, and that's what I had, you know. I just wanted to take pictures at the time, and I got the opportunity to take pictures with that and really learn to hone in the aspect of the art of the craft versus, you know, the supplemental aspects. Until this day, I don't have a bunch of gear. I don't use a bunch of gear to take pictures. I have my camera, I have the lens I prefer now, and, you know, all I need is a good amount of light to an extent, and I'm working with it, you know.
So sometimes you don't need it. I got a quick question to ask you real quick. So in the terms of pictures, has there ever been a basically a customer that's come in and asked you to do a picture, and you were just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this picture for this customer? Like, just an idea that was just so far out that you just didn't know how you were going to service them.
So far, nothing that's been completely out of bounds. Okay. But there's definitely been ideas where it's like, okay, we have to really work around whatever we have and try to create something that's either exactly what you want or as close to it as possible. Okay. That's one thing I'm always like trying to do, is like, I think outside the box. A lot of my photography work has always been something kind of like inspiration based, or not even inspiration based, but something that just comes out of thin air. And, you know, I think I call it more now, you know, airdrops from God now, where I think about it's like, okay, he just dropped something in my head to make this happen. You feel me? Because for the most part, you know, I don't like to give myself too much credit when it comes to things. You know, I give myself credit in what I've learned, you know, but there's moments and times where I was like, there's no way I would have just, I made this idea up, you know, so I give it up in that space. But, you know, there's times when it's like, oh, this is a crazy idea. I wonder what we're going to do to make it happen. And for the most part, like I said, it's been ideas that are workable. You know, I always try to make sure like ideas are manageable, you know, because some people will come with ideas that are like, up here as far as expectation wise, like, hey, I understand what you probably are expecting in your head, but sometimes we have to bring it down here to try to like bring it back to reality for a moment. It's not to say like I don't want to satisfy in that space, but it's like understanding what I know I'm capable of. I'll never try to sell myself on something I know I'm not capable of, you know.
Yeah, but I would assume you get in those situations where you kind of have to be in a spot where you're uncomfortable. Yeah. Right?
I've had a couple photo shoots that also were unexpected. Yeah. You know, as far as like what was described or what wasn't described. Okay. You know, versus like say like attire or something of that nature, where someone came in with a certain type of outfit and I was kind of ill prepared, I guess, in the mental sense, because I had an idea of what the shoot was, and then when they came on the attire, I was like, oh, that's not what I thought was happening today. You know?
Oh, you came here naked.
So I was like, oh, I didn't think that was what was happening. You know, we didn't talk about that. On top of that, I had like 2 friends assisting, so I'm looking at them like, what's going on right now? But it was all due respect. You know, it was all respectful in that space. You know, it was all good. You know, it wasn't anything like super outlandish. It was like, whoa, I wasn't. You know.
So, going back to the last question real quick, what type of camera are you using now?
Currently, what am I using? I think I'm using a Canon 800D. Nothing relatively impressive in the camera world. I'm pretty sure it's a relatively low rate camera, but I know how to use it for me and what my purposes are. And that's kind of what the importance is of just knowing your gear, knowing your camera, So if you know your camera inside out, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. So basically, if you wanted to start photography, you can use almost any camera you want to use.
I don't want to say almost any camera. Okay. If we're looking for, you still want to give good quality images, things of that nature, depending on what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Of course, you want to be in like a nice range of like, megapixel wise, I would say maybe like 24 megapixels and up. You want to be in that space. Yeah. 18 maybe megapixels, but for most part, that's more so speaking to the digital world, because I shoot digital. We should specify I shoot digital. I don't shoot film or anything like that. But okay. In that space, you want to be in a good megapixel range, but like I said, it's not so much about the gear versus what you know how to do with the gear. Because like I said, if you don't know how to use the gear, you don't have understandings of the simplistic natures of composition, framing, cropping, things of that nature, then it's like, all right, you have a $2,000 camera and you don't know what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So you don't want to be that person that drops a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, I was always in that space. Like, I don't want to drop a whole bunch of money in gear that I don't know how to use.
Yeah.
Of course, you'll learn the gear, but it's like I don't think I need that.
Yeah.
People used to think I was using like some expensive camera. I'm like, I'm not using an expensive camera, bro. I promise you.
So, I watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and I see a lot of YouTubers say, "Oh, you don't need an expensive camera or whatever. I just use my iPhone." But I see also a lot of people that do spend money on cameras and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference, or how big is the difference between using a regular iPhone and using a camera?
Good question. Yeah, I want to know that.
That is, I think, a interesting battle that's happening kind of like in the photography world, where it's like how like people are kind of selling the experience of like, say, iPhone cameras can do the same as regular or DSLR cameras and mirror cameras, mirrorless cameras and stuff. I don't know. I'm not an iPhone camera person. Yeah. I don't want to speak for that demographic, that space too much. I have nothing per se against it, but I think there's an aspect of the experience of being an actual photographer and having a camera that will never leave. As much as as great as quality as these phones are going to get, there's an aspect of having a professional photographer understanding the full understandings of photography and its space. That experience never leaves. There's a certain type of experience that comes with it versus having an iPhone camera. At least that's how I view it.
There's just something different about holding the camera in your hand.
There's just something a little bit different. At least that's how I'm looking at it right now. I don't have too much judgment on the iPhone for iPhoneography. I don't know. iPhoneography. I don't know.
No. It's not iPhone. It's iography.
Iography. I guess. I don't know. But it's a space. I love. And it was crazy. I love a lot of the pictures that people take on their iPhones. Like, I'm always like dumb impressed. Like now to this day, like I try to take better pictures on my iPhone.
Yeah, because I'm saying these iPhone cameras are next level.
iPhone, Samsung, they're really crazy.
We're recording off of iPhone right now. If y'all didn't know, this is what we're recording off of.
Why you got to give her a secret away?
I'm just saying, y'all. Y'all don't gotta buy an expensive camera. Exactly. iPhone. Use what you got.
Use what you got. That is the whole point of this.
So, when it comes to iPhone photography and stuff, I'm like, it's an interesting area. I don't think it'll ever surpass, photography in the space of like, film. Yeah. Just the actual tangible experience of having an actual camera. I think it'll never substitute.
Maybe it'll just be good for like little short films, like people who do little projects.
You never know. iPhone always sells the idea or sells the narrative that all these commercials are shot on iPhone. Maybe I don't know. Yeah. But
I would hope so.
I would like to hope so. If it is, I find it really cool. I'm pretty sure it can be.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's interesting space, and I like taking pictures on my iPhone. I'll never do it for a client per se.
Yeah.
But it's a cool space, and like I said, I don't think the experience of having an actual photographer with actual camera is ever gonna leave. There's just something different, especially if people like say film photography. Like they can have all the film filters in the world on your phone. It's not gonna take away from certain people who just enjoy the aspect of unrolling film, getting that developed or using a film camera and hearing that click and stuff like that. True. It just doesn't. That experience, the tangible experience is never gonna leave itself. Yeah. So that's one thing.
The click hit different.
Yeah. Last question before we transition.
Yeah.
As far as someone learning to take pictures, did you already have knowing how to shoot people's angles, or was that something you develop?
There was like a standard understanding of what I knew and what I've learned off of YouTube University, and just
I love how he's referring to it to an actual school.
I'm telling you. But there's stuff that I learned that definitely enhanced, because there's other photographers, of course. There's millions of photographers out there who've learned the game and are giving the game back. So it's like, why not go ahead and soak in that knowledge from people who you've worked in already? So it's like, I'm just soaking in that knowledge.
No, for sure.
And growing through it, I've worked at 2 different studios now. And they were more so on like just kind of basic photography, but they taught me, a lot to keep, to like as far as like the basic methods of photography and things to keep note of, angles and stuff. So, from YouTube to actually being able to work in the field, on hourly rate, which was something I've always kind of like dreamed of at first. It was like, oh, cool, I actually get to work as a photographer. Yeah. On a full-time basis, which I found cool. So I'd go from working at like my day job, and then being my own photographer at the same time. It was like I found like that to be the most. I feel like almost a blessing, because some people don't get that luxury in life. Being able to chase your aspiration, your dream, and then already being kind of in it. So it was like, oh, I'm already kind of living the dream in a sense, I'm looking to take it to another level, But I learned a lot from those jobs, so, and different people I worked with at those jobs. So, as far as capturing people's angles, it's something I definitely was learning to fine tune. I'm still learning to fine tune till this day, funny thing is being tall is a very hard thing when it comes to being a photographer. Just a little. Oh yeah. There's this understanding of when you're
short gang.
There's an understanding of when you're photographing someone, you kind of have to be at a certain kind of height level with your camera lens. And sometimes I'm not always there because my perception, I guess, of how high I am or how low I am can sometimes be off. But it doesn't skew the photo to an outrageous extent. But there's just this understanding of, hey, because I am 6 whatever, I got to come down a little lower to photograph to somebody so they don't look top heavy or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's things of that nature. Just those little things that I have to keep note of. That's okay. I got to learn. I got to make sure I'm keeping note of that.
Yeah.
So it's funny when I'm taking photos. I don't necessarily say all this out loud. It's kind of weird how it just kind of runs on autopilot. It just happens. Good. I'm just okay, I'm down here, and it's not a thought process. I don't try to think too much when I'm doing photo shoots. It's kind of this flow that happens about once I understand the idea, the theme, the person, almost we just kind of go about it.
So before we get out of here, man, I just want to ask you, if you're talking to your younger self, and also for the viewers out there, just starting off in photography, can you give a message, what you would want them to have hope for, or anything you can give out to them?
I don't like to consider myself super inspirational in any space. But if there's any, I guess, a word of advice I can have for someone who's looking to pursue photography and looking to, venture into the more creative space of things, just keep creating. Don't stop creating. Don't, even if you have a creative block, the way to get through that is to continuously just create whatever comes to mind. There's this aspect of working through it, and just create through it. Don't hinder yourself in that space, and truly allow life and its experiences to inspire you in whatever way it can. So that's my piece.
That's strong.
Yeah, really appreciate that. So where can they find you, your IG?
For sure. I'm not a heavy Twitter user, so I'm not gonna throw out my Twitter, but as far as IG, where you can find most of my content, Instagram is Radboy Seby, RADBOYSEBY, Radboy Seby. If you want my website, it'd be rbsphotography.me, and you can find all my work out there. So appreciate y'all.
Y'all check him out, man. All his stuff will be in the description below. I promise you, his picture said 1,000 words. It'll change your life.
Oh yeah, for sure. Man, we appreciate you for being on and being our first guest.
Appreciate it, Double R.
Much love. Yes, we're out.
For sure.
We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for joining us on this first episode of Diamond in the Rough. We're live in Starboy Studio, live in Broward, in the heart. We out.